Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm doing my November wrap-ups and I was able to finish 6 books. I had a pretty good month for November. If you remember my October wrap-ups, I had a pretty low ranked October months in terms of reads, but November definitely came back and redeemed itself. So I was very fortunate that I had 3 5-star reads, I had 2 4-star reads, and 1 2-star reads. I do want to say the 2-star reads. I kind of knew going in it would be a 2-star read, but I intentionally picked it because I wanted an easy, kind of like romance that was easy to predict, and it did deliver. So I guess in a way it probably should be ranked higher, but objectively for me, it is still a 2-star read. Before I wrap up each book, I'll always appreciate it if you like my content to please hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have read any of these books that I'm going to wrap up, I would love to hear what you thought down below because damn, there were some great books. The first book I started my November with is actually a book I started reading right before Halloween started but wasn't able to finish for October. But you know what? It made me have a strong November, which was my first Stephen King book as an adult, Pet Sematary. This book seemed to be the most popular amongst Stephen King fans, and I want to say it's my first adult Stephen King book because I did read Dreamcatcher when I was young in like grade 4, grade 5, and I think I was too young to read a Stephen King book because it was quite traumatic. I had nightmares for a while, so I didn't read any of his books except for one more. I think it was called Gerard's Game or Gerald's Game in University because it was really popular. But back then, that book didn't have an impact on me. So I kind of have steered away from Stephen King book until Pet Sematary, and this was a 5 out of 5 read. So this book, if you haven't read it, basically there's a Dr. Lewis Creed and he relocates to a smaller town with his wife and 2 young kids. There's like a toddler and a baby, or maybe like a young child and a toddler. And they move into this house, and across the street is their neighbor Judd. And between the 2 houses is this, I guess, not a highway, but a road where lots of trucks go back and forth. And because of this, lots of pets get hit by trucks, and nearby there's a neighborhood cemetery called Pet Sematary where all the local kids bury their pets. And if you want to know why cemetery is spelled Sematary, is because the kids built and wrote the sign, and that's why it's spelled incorrectly, which makes it even extra creepy. So basically, long story short, is the Lewis's family's cat gets hit by a truck pretty early on in the book, and Judd's like, oh, if you bury your pet at this pet cemetery, maybe they can come back. So the cat comes back, but something's a bit off about it, and it's not exactly right. It smells kind of like death. And yeah, I'm just gonna stop the book there, but it was just really great suspense. I love Stephen King's writing. I mean, there's a reason why he's the king of horror and a very prolific writer. I just loved it. I thought it was the right amount of creepy and suspenseful. It wasn't too gory for me, and it was just a really great book. I also watched the movie adaptation that came out in the 80s, and I thought the movie was also done really well. It had really good balance of like this nostalgia for me, like of the movies back then. And it was kind of campy, but also I can see if I watch it when it came out, it would have been like a proper horror movie. And then this leads to my only low star 2-star review for the month, which is Second First Impression by Sally Florin. I do want to say I picked this book intentionally after Pet Sematary because I just wanted an easy read. I will have to say, if you like easy romance where everything wraps up quite nicely and it's like a rainy Sunday day, definitely recommend this book. Very cozy. Basically, we meet Ruthie, who is self-proclaimed 25-year-old going on 95. She works at like an old folks community, and basically it's getting bought out. And then she meets this guy who is, of course, the person who's buying out the old folks home son, and he's kind of like this badass, and he has tattoos and long hair, and you can kind of guess what happens because she's kind of like this self-proclaimed old person at heart, and he's kind of this bad boy, and it kind of cross paths, and this old cares home is going to be bought out and redeveloped, and I think you can kind of guess where this is going. Yeah, it was a nice read, very predictable, but yeah, it just not a book I would recommend unless this is exactly what you're looking for. The next book I read was also a 5 out of 5. There's also a movie adaptation with Viggo Mortensen that came out a few years ago. So if you haven't guessed already, this book is The Row by Cormac McCarthy. Again, 5 out of 5. Not my usual genre, but this book was just great. I really loved the movie, and the book was just really good, even though I knew what was going to happen from the movie. It didn't take away from the book. His writing style is really great. I love how there's, well, okay, I won't say I love because normally I don't like the style, but it works for this story in this book. There's no chapters and it's very simple dialogue and it just works, it just flows. So basically, if you don't know what this book or you haven't seen the movie is about, is we come into this post-apocalyptic world. We're not sure what happened. We're not sure how much time has happened since D-Day. But there is a man, and we presume his son, and they're just existing and they're surviving. And they go through a lot of tough times. They don't come across a lot. When they do, it's very like me versus them. If you try to help them, you're going to put yourself in danger. And it's really interesting to have the boy, because he's quite young, to have this kind of like innocent view of the world, to trust people, and the man who knows to not trust people. And yeah, this book is just interesting for me because, you know, when you watch a lot of post-apocalyptic or zombie movies or books, which this isn't a zombie movie or book by the way, but I'm just putting the same genre, I find that the protagonists are always like so great at being heroes or saving themselves or saving others. But this book is so realistic and really makes me feel seen, because I always feel that if I was in a post-apocalyptic world, I'd be the first one to die, or and I wouldn't be a hero. And this book does a really good job making it very realistic. This book is very slow action because of the lack of a hero aspect. However, when stuff happens, I'm like, holy shit, this is fucking insane and going 1,000 miles per hour, but probably because I can really relate to that situation. So I really recommend this book. It's quite a quick read. If you haven't seen the movie, I definitely recommend it as well. The next book I read is Carrie Soto's Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. An easy 5 out of 5. I love The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I didn't think she could do it again, but Taylor Jenkins Reid does it again. And I didn't think going into this book that I would care about a sports novel about tennis. However, it's her writing, how she does it. I loved it. It was a great read. I recommend it. So basically, this book is about Carrie Soto, who was a young, prominent tennis female player, and she had the most records for like Grand Slams or wherever it is in the tennis world. And she retires, and then at 37, like 20 years, or not 20, maybe 15 years later, there's a new prominent female player who's going to take her number of Grand Slam titles, and Carrie Soto comes out of retirement against all odds and comes back at the age of 37 to reclaim her stake. And this book is just so great because even though it is a sport novel, and even though I don't really care about tennis, except I play it casually sometimes, it makes you really sucked into this world of tennis and how you're really cheering for her, even though she's kind of an insufferable character. And one thing about this book that really blew me or surprised me was, even though it focused a lot about Carrie Soto's career and personal development, it really did a great job showing the relationship between her and her father, and I really didn't expect that. This book was really great. It made me just feel very, I'm cheering for her, and I hope she does well. So yeah, this book is great. I highly recommend it. The next book I read is a non-fiction book. It's called The Prince Rupert Hotel for the Homelessness by Christina Lamb. I gave this book a 4 out of 5. Basically, this book is just like, I think, like a nice gem that you find once in a while. It's basically about a hotel in the UK that when the COVID pandemic hit in March 2020, that, you know, it had to close its day-to-day business, and basically it took in homeless people. So this book accounts the day-to-day of what it is to house and home the homeless. It profiles each homeless person that lived in this hotel, and it's just a very sweet book, but also very honest about the struggles of people who are homeless, because this book showcases people who are the usual, I guess you say, mentally ill or addicted to drugs, but also showcases that because of COVID pandemic, lots of people were just one paycheck away from being homeless, or some people just were in bad situations, and it has a lot of empathy for people who are addicts or mentally ill, that they are a product of like cycles and multiple cycles of trauma and neglect. It's not just one bad decision. So this book was really great to read. I really loved it. It was easy to read, and I really like how Christina Lamb, the author, took time to showcase each homeless person's backstory, and it's a great book. I really recommend it. The last book I read is YOLK by Mary H.K. Choi. I gave this book a 4 out of 5. It was close to a 5 out of 5, but the characters are just too insufferable for me to give it a well-rounded 5 out of 5. This book basically follows two Korean American sisters who grew up in Texas, then moved to New York one after the other. The older one in her mid-20s, she is successful in, I think, in finance or accounting, and she has her shit together. The younger sister goes to New York in fashion school and is struggling, and they have a very estranged relationship from their family and with each other, until one day the older sister finds her younger sister and says, "Hey, I have cancer." And basically their relationship comes head to head, and they figure shit out. This book was so, I'm how to say it, like I was just really engrossed in it. Like the author did a really good job talking from Jane, the younger sister's self-worth, her struggles with her eating disorder, her relationship to men, to feeling that she's worthwhile, and it's just very honest and very vulnerable. And it was just a great read, and it made me. I actually recommended my coworker because my coworker has a sister. I don't have a sister, and I think that if I had sisters, this book would be like, whoa, really captures all the ups and downs of having a sister. And yeah, it was a great read. Lots of times I felt uncomfortable, but I felt there's lots of very honest conversations that the sisters had with each other and also with their mother. Those are all the books I've read in November. If you've read any of them, I'd love to hear what you thought down below. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.